while you're making a film, you're letting go of everything you've planned, and you're opening yourself up to the living thing that's happening in front of you, and you know, trying to. But that's what's exciting about it too, you know.
I've always thought of you as a writer and director with a really distinct style, and I was really kind of gratified to discover that you're also the editor of all of your own works, and this kind of opened up an understanding for me of you know, how these very beautifully formed films could come into being in the way that they do. But it also made me sort of ask a lot of questions about how you work as someone who does you know, travel, I guess, with your films across those different parts of the process.
Well, I learned to edit from, I was just talking about this a moment ago, I learned to edit from Larry Fessenden, who is the lead actor in River of Grass, and also a filmmaker himself, and he cut River of Grass, and during that summer he taught me to edit. And then I had the good luck of not being able to get another film made for a decade, which gave me lots of time to practice cutting. And I did, I practiced. And so when I made Old Joy, I mean, you know, to be honest, I've been largely I'm the editor we can afford, and so I get the job. But I have gotten quite used to, you know, I look forward to it, and I think it's really where you learn all the mistakes of the film you made, and from cutting the films up to this point, you know, now you know, when I'm on set or planning shots, the cut and the shot planning go hand in hand, and so, you know, it's a nice way to be able to think. Though I think there's lots of reasons to work with another editor and have a fresh set of eyes. I'm just like getting back my project, you know, like making a film is such a shared experience. You're sort of alone, or a lot of times I'd be working with Jonathan Raymond, you're in writing, and you're prepping, you're doing a lot of one-on-one work, and then suddenly you're in a whole community of people you're working with, and which is its own great thing. But then it's, after it's over, it's nice to huddle back down and sort of like having the covers of, all right, let's see what we did, you know, and yeah, I just kind of, you're getting used to the idea of the film you made versus the film you thought you'd make when you know, had control of the weather, and, you know, and could swap things, you know, anything was possible. And you sort of come to terms with, like, okay, here's this film I'm making. And it's good to do that in private.
And does your relationship with these, you know, beautifully formed characters change as you're going through those kind of, if you like, 3 phases of the filmmaking process?
Sure. I mean, when you're thinking about a film, you change it in your own mind all the time, and then suddenly you're shooting it, and you've been imagining someone's voice. We never have a lot of rehearsal time, and when we do a lot of time, that time is used in less with reading lines and more with in certain women. The last film I made, you know, it was working on the ranch and having the actor work on the ranch and learn those chores. Or in Meek's Cutoff, we had a week of, we had all the actors there for a week of pioneer camp, where we, each family was allotted a certain amount of money, and they had to like shop for their wagon and what they would take on the ride, and then they pitched the tent every day and learned how to make fire without matches and cook bread in the ground, and just, so it's not so much running lines as it is like learning the jobs, or you know, so it's that. So then all of a sudden you're on set, and it's happening, and people are bringing their own voices and their own ideas, and will always be other, and sometimes it's not at, you know, you, it's always a surprise, and it's always a, you know, it's, while you're making a film, you're letting go of everything you've planned, and you're opening yourself up to the living thing that's happening in front of you, and you know, trying to, but that's what's exciting about it too, you know, is like there's things you didn't think of, and there's just people responding to each other, responding to animals, or responding to weather, and it's different, yeah.
Absolutely. Can we sort of rewind right back to the beginning, and one of the things in revisiting these films for the retrospective that struck me so significantly was that Old Joy, made you know, more than a decade later, comes out, and you have established at this point a sort of Kelly Reichardt style of filmmaking, as it were. There is a very unique voice to that film.
Again, putting a good spin on things. No, like, yeah, I had a decade of really not being able to get a film made, and I went back and started working on Super 8 again, and editing in a way where no one is, like, you can just totally fuck up and throw it away if it's bad, and which is a real great thing to have. Like, my students are so psyched to send the first thing they ever make to a festival, and I'm like, why do you want to do that? Don't you want to have this part of your life where no one's watching you and you can just make bad stuff for a while? But I did have that time to learn, but I also think what happened is that I met this writer. I had read a novel by Jonathan Raymond, who I had met through Todd Haynes, but I read his novel. I was driving cross country on, there's this Route 50, it's like the last 2-lane highway across America, and I was gonna go do this, and I was going out to Kansas where In Cold Blood happened, and I was gonna, you know, go to the courthouse and go, I don't know, just for whatever reason, go check it all out. And I was reading John's book along the way, and by the time I got to Kansas, I just stayed in this motel room, getting really into John's book, and ended up writing him from there and saying, do you have any short films that could all take place outside and that I could write a dog into? Because I had this dog that I had found and just couldn't really be left alone. So and he sent me Old Joy, which was a story he had written to accompany these photographs of Justine Kurland, this beautiful photographer. And I think finding a writer that was, you know, like finding work that I didn't have to rely on my own writing as the first seed of something, and that I could go into a world that was not from my background and was different, and just fall into a world and investigate a world and research a world and a landscape that wasn't as known to me. It was such a huge relief to find, you know, because everyone when you're young is like, you tell your own story, and it's a relief, like, like, no, that is not the thing to do. Like, I'm so sick of my story, and like I could go off and figure out the way other people live or whatever. And I just think having the foundation of good writing that made the filmmaking so much stronger. And then I was lucky enough to do 4 more films with John, and I think a good piece of writing is, you can't underestimate that, because it's really the bedrock of what you're working off of.
And what was it when you first read his writing that you know, that you particularly kind of zoomed in on and felt connected to?
Well, his first novel is fantastic, and he actually has a new book out just now called Freebird, which is also really awesome. In Old Joy, I remember everyone I showed it to said, there is not a film in there. There's no film in there. I was like, yes, I feel like there is. It feels like nothing, and then you just keep thinking about it. You're like, oh yeah, it's about friendship, and no, it's about male masculinity, and oh, it's what, you know, it just kept building for me, like, and then someone showed me, I don't know exactly why, but someone showed me the film Blissfully Yours, and it was the one person that didn't read the script that I had made from John's book, that everyone was saying, like, I just don't think there's a film there, and then this one person, after I gave him the script, gave me Blissfully Yours, and that was just such a nice present, because it, not that they're alike in some way, but it just the way time and nature and a walk through the woods and all that could work. I don't know, it was really felt like a push to go for it. And so, yeah, so I think that John, there's a lot of space to work my own voice into John's stuff and to maneuver and to expand. I like the way he writes, really like Miley Malloy does in the film I just made called Certain Women. People that write where there's a lot of chores. I like chores. I like to film chores and process, and I like routine, and but also that people are really built into their environment. So it's like you're gonna, you could find your way in from starting to research a place first, which it works nicely for me. So then when I'm working on the script, I start scouting really early on, and that process of script writing and scouting goes kind of hand in hand usually, yeah.
Can I ask you about that attraction to New Frontiers, which does seem to be something that filters through all of your work to some degree? And I was reminded of it again, watching Certain Women recently, when there's that lovely little sequence with the rancher when she's at home, and there's the sort of space, the last frontier space thing on the television. And what is it for you creatively, I guess, that draws you to those notions?
I don't know. It will be such a disappointing answer. I'm such a nuts and bolts person. I just want a project to work on and something to think about when I wake up. And so really when I was working with John, by the time I'd finish editing, he would be like, here's an idea, or here's where we go to the desert, or we go to his friend's farm. Him and his partners had this, friends that had this organic farm, and like, this would be a good location for a story. Let's write something for here. But there was sort of like a seed of what to do next at the ready for me. And then John was going to work on his novel, and he had 2 kids in the time we had been working together. And I was like, what do you mean I have to figure it out for myself? Oh my God, what do I do? I was in a panic. Like, I just started reading short stories, and I just like to have a project, just because I just don't want to deal with everything that crowds your life when you don't have a project, like whatever. Paying your Visa card, mail, whatever it is, all the crap, go to the dentist. I just found Miley Malloy's stories, and I was looking for I wanted to shoot somewhere besides Oregon. I thought I should try like a different landscape. I drive through Montana a lot, and I stay there a lot, but I hadn't really, I used to spend time there when I was a kid, but I hadn't really investigated it in a long time. And so when I found her stories, and there were these characters that filled the criteria of chores, animals, another winter, a winter shooting, how horrible, cars, all the things I seem to want to do but don't want to do. But just that it was also a people that seemed very much an extension and a part of where they were living. And so it kind of hit all my... So it's more like that more than like a grand scheme. I want to get out of New York. I live in New York. I don't want to make films in New York. I like taking a group of people, and with my producers, Neil Coppin and Nish Johnny, who I've made 5 films with, going off the grid and just going somewhere. It's a very selfish way of making films, because you take people away and they don't go home to their families, and they get separated from their regular lives also, and you just have them fully consumed with thinking about your film and drinking. I think a lot of drinking goes on. So it's more practical like that than this. I mean, it's nice if things are relevant, feel relevant. And her stories were a little bit more, the film is based on 3 stories from 2 of her collections of writings, and they were a little had a little bit more of a timeless feeling to them, and I was working to make them more contemporary and sort of, they end up, I think, being more of the moment than I would have even expected, just the way things have gone. But
it's interesting because I think I can sense actually quite a few resonances between certain women and the film that followed, Old Joy, Wendy and Lucy, particularly around, I guess, that the notion of the way that the outside world is impacting on the characters, and the kind of the sense of economic crisis in Wendy and Lucy, which is never very far away from your contemporary work, but it's never the overwhelming element either.
no, yeah. A lot of them are about people who are sort of don't have a big net under them and are trying to, especially in Wendy and Lucy, where one wrong decision and you could, you're screwed then. And I think a lot of them deal with questions of community and question about who we are to each other and what do we owe to each other. Is it, sort of an each man for himself situation that we want to live in? And, it's mostly they're focused on American life. And, or is it, is it more about a feeling of, what is this American dream? Is it, that I have enough, if your family is lacking, I can cover us both? Or is it going to, it seems like it's going to continue to be a bigger, I got mine, good luck. I don't know. It doesn't seem, so I think the sadness of that is in the films, because I think there is like a child like part of me that can't still just, I don't know. It's so funny to be taken aback so constantly about life's realities and having your feelings hurt by it or something like that. This doesn't seem good for everybody.
I think we're very grateful to you for continuing to work that particular line.